It's hard to imagine the iconic Confederation Park, a staple of the Calgary community, was once destined to be a garbage dump. Our next guest, Millie Smith, is the last of the original committee for Confederation Park in 1964, where she can tell us where it all began to be what it is today.
My name is Millie Smith, but everybody calls me Millie Smith. I was born in January of 1924 in Edmonton, Alberta. It was the Depression years, so things were a little tough for a lot of people, but kids didn't know it. We just enjoyed life, and just as long as we had a roof over our heads and loving parents and good meals, we were quite happy. And it wasn't until we got a little older that we found out we had grown up in the Depression era, but we were a little bit more fortunate than some people were. Well, it started with Eric Musgrave. He lived in Rosemont, which is just beyond the park, and they had been thinking, the city had been thinking of having it as a nuisance ground. And when the citizens of that neighborhood heard that, no, we don't want a nuisance ground, we want a park. We don't have a park on the North Hill. At that time, they didn't. And so he started work on the idea of getting a group of people together who were interested in a park and establishing it for Confederation year. This is 1964, and Confederation year being 67. And we thought if we can get it going by 3 years from now, it can be a reality. And the city finally agreed to it if we got enough support from the surrounding communities, which we certainly worked hard at getting everybody interested in the aspect of it. And pretty soon there was no stopping. Everybody wanted to be a member of Confederation. Well, it was called the Centennial Ravine Park Society at that time. We had to have a name. And it wasn't until '67 we chose the name from many, many people who said Confederation Park. And that's how come the name. And so we just went from there, working hard, having speakers go out to high schools and different things like this. And the young people would come and plant trees on a Saturday morning. And there were just little trees, and you couldn't even imagine the park as it stands today from those little trees that they purchased for $5 each, and they were throughout the park. And then we got outfits like the IODE, I think they had a rose garden, and different societies had different ideas of that kind. So throughout the park, we then had a children's playground, we had baseball fields, many, many things evolved. And by '67, we had a real park going. And now it's the prettiest, no, they call it the most picturesque park in Calgary. Parks are very important to people. It's a place where they can go and relax. After a day's hard work, it's nice to go to a place they can just walk or ride on a bicycle or chat to your neighbors or whatever. If you don't have something like that, you feel like you have to go all the way out to the mountains to get your relaxation. And this way, if you have parks at hand, you can walk your dog or you can do whatever. And I think people really appreciated the fact of the park. And the kids, the young people, they were really 100% behind it.
Millie Smith has been involved with causes all her life and still is today, notwithstanding the fact that she's 91. She also was involved with Meals on Wheels when they came here to Calgary 50 years ago. Millie Smith reflects on its very beginnings and has loved watching it grow over the past half-century.
And found it very gratifying, and we expanded from a church basement to a much larger place to serve meals, from 100 meals a day to 500. And that was an enormous jump, but it worked. And since then, it has just grown like wildfire all across Canada. So I remember a time we realized we couldn't not afford to, but we didn't have the capacity to do it. Even the diabetics, we just had to cut down on their sugar intake, as far as the things that they had in their regular meals. They just adjusted them slightly. We couldn't do it completely. And since then, I think everything's changed for the better.
My favorite legacy of Millie Smith is the fact that she was the Calgary-based publicist for Voice of Women, which is a peace organization that opposed the Canadian men fighting in the Vietnam War. This movement was so successful that women from all around the globe joined forces.
A famous TV broadcaster, Fred Davis, his wife started it in Toronto. And she thought if women spoke up and said, we don't want our young sons to go to war again, and for a needless war such as this one is turning out to be, we certainly don't want it. We didn't want the war to come here. We didn't want Canadians to now join in the Vietnam War and lose a whole bunch of young men for what we could see no reason at all. And it was proved so, as the years went by. The United States did not win that war. They had to get out in, I think it was in the 70s. But there for a while, the United States were hoping we would join them in their fight. And Lester Pearson did not think that was the proper thing to do. And so we unfortunately didn't.
Millie Smith played an active role in our community and in our world. She believes in paying it forward, and by experience, it has been very rewarding. I want to thank her for sharing her legacy with us on BC TV. Well, let's throw it back to Casey Logan with more holiday-themed dating advice.